They went in for old bottles and rusted coins. The kind of weekend dig that starts with a metal detector and a thermos of coffee came out, holding something that didn't belong in any textbook. For 30 seconds, picture the sun sliding under the brim of a trucker hat, the shimmer of dust rising from a midden that had been buried since before anyone alive could remember. Then imagine the flat, stunned silence that followed when the device thudded on metal that sounded wrong. Not the hollow clink of a can or the thin ring of salvaged silver, but a muted, dense tone, like a bell struck inside a vault. What they unearthed looked at first like a carved Platan alloy that shouldn't have rusted that way, symbols that didn't match any known language. And it seemed so precise, it suggested machine work far beyond what the region's 19th century mills produced. For anyone who'd spent years turning over relics and rubbing dirt from brass, this was the kind of find that makes you stop breathing. For those first few seconds, between heartbeats and the frantic call for gloves, the thought that rippled through the team was simple and impossible. This shouldn't exist here. And if it was real, if it survived the soil and the fire of time, it would rewrite the story of a place people thought they already knew. When the cameras roll and the textbooks open, the comfortable timelines we've been given start to wobble. The field notes from that morning read like the log of a ship that had hit an ice shelf. Coordinates, soil layers, a sketch of the object laid out beside a tin of screws. Local historians remembered a washed-out road and a family farm where legends of old ruins were shrugged off as anything but unusual. But the metal itself refused those convenient explanations. Lab tests took 2 days to schedule and 3 long nights to process results that read like a provocation. Composition inconsistent with known regional metallurgy. Microetchings not matching any cataloged script isotopic ratios that suggested the ore came from a deposit hundreds, maybe thousands of miles away. Each new piece of data pulled the story wider. Suddenly, the find wasn't just about one farmer's field, it was a thread tied to trade routes no one had supposed crossed this valley. 2 hands and tools and decisions made long before the county courthouse existed. As the team dug through archives' old maps with faded ink and margins full of farmers, notes began to look less like parochial clutter and more like a palimpsest traces of travelers, movements of objects and ideas that had crept through the cracks of accepted history. The more they looked, the more the edges of the map blurred into places nobody had thought to look. The object's details refused to be explained away. Under magnification, tiny grooves carved with exacting regularity suggested a tool set and a hand fluent in geometry. The symbols, if they were symbols, recurred in partial patterns, a grammar waiting to be cracked. When an independent conservator soaked a sample to remove centuries of grime, a thin ribbon of paint under the surface revealed colors impossible to produce in the region at that era. An ethnomusicologist who happened to be passing through described one of the etched marks as a pictograph used in ritual contexts halfway across the globe. A retired professor chimed in via a late-night phone call, sober and urgent, if this is what I think it hints at. You're looking at contact, not conquests, something like an exchange. None of the experts could say they were certain. Each hypothesis carried its own improbabilities, and improbability, in this case, smelled like possibility. Even in the lab's fluorescence, amid careful notes and sterile steel, there was an electric thrill like the moment before a storm, when the air is heavy and the old maps in the archive seem to whisper. People started to ask the question that excavators dread and crave in equal measure. If objects travel, why did this one stop here? What followed was part detective story, part ethical minefield. Word spread fast. By evening, the find was on local radio. By morning, it threaded through forums and message boards where amateur sleuths and professional archaeologists exchanged theories like trading cards. Private collectors called with offers that made hands tremble. A lawyer called with questions about ownership. A university called with an offer of funding and strict conditions. The team watched as a calm experiment became a courtroom drama in waiting. But the more the world crowded in, the more these discoveries highlighted a quieter problem. Who gets to tell the story of a find that belongs to everyone but is often controlled by the ones who can pay for the tests? The community that had long been told its land was unremarkable now stood at the center of a debate over stewardship and access. Neighbors who had grown up with the land remembered stories. Their grandparents shouted over the porch tailies of strange ships seen off the coast, of travelers who left behind objects that looked like the future. The diggers faced a choice: hand the object to institutions that might lock it away in study and display, or work toward a model that kept the story with the people who had lived on that land for generations. It's a political moment disguised as an archaeological one. It's also a human moment. Arguments at kitchen tables. An elder who remembers a phrase in a language no one else speaks. A teenage volunteer who realizes history can be messy and very much alive. Throughout it all, the object sat waiting in a carefully lit crate, and its presence asked something more uncomfortable than where it came from. What will we do with the truth if the truth complicates our assumptions? As analysis deepened, anomalies multiplied. Radiocarbon dating of organic materials associated with the layer-placed parts of the context earlier than anyone expected, while metallurgical signatures hinted at multiple phases of manufacture and repair, suggesting not one visitor but recurrent contact over generations. A satellite image, re-examined with fresh eyes, revealed faint linear traces across the terrain, leading toward a ridge that local hikers swore had always felt. Off on that ridge, another team found fragments, a shard with a pattern similar to the plate, a bead of glass not native to the area, a rope cleat made with a knotting technique known from shipwrights far away. Each piece fit together like a sentence in a language no one had quite learned to read. The implications unfurled in two directions, one that thrilled and one that unsettled. On the thrilling side, the possibility of forgotten network trade, migration, exchange that reframed the settlement patterns of the whole region. On the unsettling side, the recognition that history is more porous than nationalist narratives and easier to claim for identity than to live with when it challenges a community's origin story. When villagers gathered in the schoolhouse to hear updates, there were tears and laughter and, unexpectedly, fierce pride. The story, once a rumor, had become their story, and everyone wanted a say in what it meant. No definitive answer arrives at the end of a good mystery. Instead, there's a better kind of ending. Widening of questions. The plate remained in the lab, carefully conserved and photographed from every angle. The maps were digitized and sent to teams across the world who offered different readings. A graduate student plotted trade route models that made historians rewrite a paragraph in a forthcoming book. But the most important discoveries happened outside the labs. Neighbors who had never spoken now compared family tales. Schoolchildren traced symbols in crayon and asked what it meant to belong to a place with an invisible past. An older man who had once been a skeptic insisted on teaching metal detecting basics to anyone who wanted to learn. The find didn't close a case. It opened a conversation that threaded across generations and borders. It asked viewers quietly, insistently, to imagine a world where objects move in ways that complicate our neat histories. It asked that we hold uncertainty, not as a failure, but as an invitation to be curious, to dig a little deeper, to listen to the stories the land keeps. If you've read this far, there's a question waiting for you that won't fit in a single comment, but will fit perfectly in a conversation. What part of a place's past are you willing to have changed by something you didn't expect?